This is the reading sample, of course. Also have beautiful ornaments inside. I want to show you these beautiful ornaments too, like the hat here and some other things. I think you can see them. I will read the first chapter now, The Essence of a Beauty, of the book Descent of a Beauty. It's a summary of what has happened so far in the first 2 volumes, memorizes the background story and leads to Logan's and Kik's new adventure. It starts with the good old banter between Logan and Kik. I will now read the intro of Freedom Rider to you. It is inspired by the Knight Rider intro. Sunrise. Freedom Rider. An adventurous ride into the powerful life of a man who has disappeared. Logan Grace. A restless wanderer on a journey to help the less fortunate, the weak ones, the powerless, in a reality of millions who act above equity. The Essence of a Beauty. Are you ready, pal? I shouted with high delight because I had been eagerly anticipated this acceleration and adventure for months. Looking for freedom was blasting from the car's speakers. Even though I was a member of the Corporation of Development and Equity, it did not mean that Kik and I were always working. That means only chasing criminals or helping people. My name is Logan Grace, and I was 33 years old by now, so I was in the full bloom of my youth. In front of me was Kik, the computer-intelligent companion car. The car was a modified 1982 Trans Am, colored in bold medium to dark red. But the Pontiac Firebird Trans Am was no ordinary car. In addition to gull-wing doors, the sleek sports car also had a neural artificial intelligence as a special feature in the field of technology development. It communicated with a thought voice, which meant that I could only hear its thoughts in my head. This provided to be very practical most of the time, because sometimes it was necessary that criminals didn't notice that I could give a thought comment to my car. Indeed, it could be maneuvered by thought control in addition to normal driving, which made us very much fused together on a mental level. There were only my brainwaves stored in Kik, which enabled only me as the driver to steer him, and on the other hand, he could only talk to me mentally. He also had the ability to act independently by means of my thought pattern. Only his thought voice could be made audible to others by means of a function called thought projection, so that, as I once expressed it to Alexander, no one thought I had a screw loose when I answered Kik. In addition, Kik, which was very much inspired by the certain black Trans Am, had so-called atomic compressed titanium, which made him basically indestructible, because our engineers wanted to design a singular vehicle which was nevertheless different and independent. This atomic compressed titanium had been created in collaboration with NASA, who, as you know, needed heat shields for their space rockets. At our first meeting, I was still a bit confused by the thought-communicated Trans Am, but in the meantime I was very happy about my partner and confident. Even though it was basically a high supercar, however, none of CODE, the Corporation of Development and Equity, could bring themselves to consider the Trans Am, which we all affectionately called K.I.T.T, as a simple car. On the contrary, even the sometimes somewhat stiff and also quite beloved by me Alexander Murphy considered him an equal member of CODE. Alexander Murphy saved my life over 2 years ago when I was hit by an acid projectile, a modified ammunition cartridge filled with acid, and I survived only because of something called face skin. The shell of the projectile was almost as paper thin. The face skin was a bulletproof skin that I wore over my actual face and that saved my life when I encountered one of my adversaries, James Bossetti, who wanted to kill me because I put his son Thomas Bossetti in a psychiatric hospital at a long time ago without knowing how all these events were really connected. The influence of hypnosis at that time caused a loss of memory, so that at that time I did not know I actually was either, and my whole world became a part of the scene. After my Chevrolet Camaro, which I driving as an FBI agent at that time, fell victim to a hail of bullets some distance from the casinos in Las Vegas, I received my absolute dream car, K.I.T.T, from Alexander Murphy. Since then I was a member of K.I.T.T, which was also affiliated with Grace Technologies, which did tuning on cars, among other things. Perhaps my aversion to guns was also due to this event. As a last sentence, there was Spy Grace, our espionage department, which I had to deal with at my last case and which also worked with MI6, the British Secret Service. I vividly remembered C.J. Carter, who was in that department and who was a real basket case in my last case, because a criminal was holding his family captive and he was being blackmailed. In addition, I had to deal with an enigmatic phantom who committed a murder but was definitely on a par with the real Phantom of the Opera in terms of voice. I reminisced for another moment as I looked at K.I.T.T's rear end, for the Trans Am did not move off until I signaled it to. K.I.T.T and I were still the only living beings in this godforsaken area at the moment. I also looked at the black vanity plate with the white embossed letters Florida Grace. I wasn't wearing my black leather jacket at the moment, along with jeans and cowboy boots, but had swapped my unusual clothes for something else that was also quite comfortable. Unlike Alexander Murphy, who really rarely wore anything else, I absolutely disliked suits or tuxedos. Alexander, on the other hand, seemed to have an almost inexhaustible repertoire of suits in grey, black, blue or dark grey, which he almost always completed with a tie or matching color. Pamela, on the other hand, as K.I.T.'s maintenance mechanic and also motherly caregiver, mostly preferred a mechanic's overalls of various color schemes. The videotape with the recording of the exoprotile experiment, which took place in a controlled environment and under experimental conditions, was in the archives of K.I.T.T, and I had not watched it for years. The video rested in K.I.T.'s archives just as the mysterious 3 steps for making atomic compression in 3 different vaults of the corporation's subsidiaries, Grace Technologies and Spy Grace. James Bossetti had managed to steal a prototype bowling ball that also had atomic compression, which he planned to use for his own purpose at the time. More recently, however, we got to deal with my uncle Edward Grace, who was building a comparable car to K.I.T.T, which he called CAP, the Computer Automated Prototype Program Trans Am, which had something comparable to the atomic compressed titanium. I was hoping, after my uncle, the prototype and the Phantom disappeared, to finally be able to relax a bit, and that is exactly what K.I.T.T and I intended to do now. The Grace Intelligent, as the car was called, because the neural artificial intelligence was called K.I.T.T, officially belonged to the corporation, but Alexander and I both knew that K.I.T.T would only tolerate another driver in his driver's seat with difficulty, especially since the Ford control was only calibrated to me, and anyone else, if they managed to get the doors open, could only drive him like a normal car. The car also had Face ID in the doors handles. That was calibrated to my face only and worked by means of a laser scanning process that matched my facial features with those in K.I.T.'s database. In addition, the car still had weight sensors and so-called intelligent paint, which saw through any deception anyway, as I was able to experience a few times. After this short excursion into my mental past, I turned my thoughts back to reality and focused my attention again to K.I.T.T standing in front of me. At K.I.T.'s tail ran 2 neon yellow straps, which were sturdy but also elastic, and 2 loops located at the other hand lead to my gloves, which were also blue. I felt a slight nervousness pass through me, and for a moment I associated my current undertaking with water skiing, because water skiing was a well-known sport, but it was usually done from boats, never with a car. Even though I would have owned this option, because K.I.T.T also had an amphicar mode with which he could drive on the water, which was really cool, but which we tried out less during our chase with the Santa Monica and James Borsetti. I stayed with the road now. Somehow, while I enjoy riding on the water with K.I.T.T, on the other hand, I feared I would simply drown, even though K.I.T.T had a program to protect human life, and his top priority was to protect my life above all else, as well as the lives of others. With one hand, I was still adjusting my transparent goggles, which ran together behind my thick, dark brown, medium length curls. I was wearing ski clothes, also due to the somewhat cold temperatures that morning, but I had no skis under my feet. I grabbed the two loops tighter and leaned back a bit on my black roller skates. Inline skate I didn't choose this time, I tried these next time. The roller skates might be a bit old-fashioned, but I wanted to start with these first. Having raced down a Bobblestead track last time with K.I.T.T for recreational fun and really enjoyed the rush of speed. We were on a relatively flat track because K.I.T.T was faster than any other car, but I wanted to start by not breaking my bones the first time. I smiled and took another deep breath. Let's go, K.I.T.T. Ole! I said exuberantly and felt the gear shift lever of the Trans Am inside shift from the P to the D position, and the tires with the bowling caps were slowly set in motion. The corresponding letter at the gearbox then lit up in white. On the gear shift lever itself was a white-green chess piece. K.I.T.T started off quite slowly at first, and I could feel the white digital speedometer counting up slowly from 10 and the car picking up speed more and more. I was able to keep my balance quite well and only lunged slightly back and forth behind the rear of the car. Small stones and dust were swirled up under my rollers, and I was grateful to have put on the safety goggles, even if this ruined my hairstyle. I laughed and a row of even white teeth became visible. I also used to work as a male model, but the time was long behind me and there was no one who recognized me on the street and wanted a joint photo with me for years. Only I didn't give up my singing, and I still gave a few private concerts, especially for the people of K.I.T.T, because Pamela and also John, Haster's nephew, whom we also met some time ago and whose uncle drove a cowboy Cadillac, were quite enthusiastic about my voice. Besides, I really like to sing. The aforementioned Phantom was also allowed to enjoy my singing skills. However, I wanted to reduce this somewhat because Alexander finally hired me to fight crime and not to make a career as a singer. Alexander and my father, David Grace, shared a deep friendship, and Alexander carried on my father's legacy after his death and would live on his dream so that we continue to help people who were in need. However, this would also not have been possible without the support of the President of the United States, who supported the company primarily financially. Alexander also had a friendship with the President. I always admired Alexander a bit for that, because dealing with the big wigs, like presidents, sheiks and kings, always caused some discomfort in me because, for one thing, I had to squeeze back into one of the suits I hated, and besides, I never really know how to treat these people or how to behave toward them. Although, of course, my nervousness was not really appropriate. Alexander, on the other hand, had excellent diplomatic skills and he loved opera, unlike me. The white digital speedometer counted up a little further, then the neural artificial intelligence apparently realized that the speed was sufficient to both minimize the risk of injury to me and also keep me from suddenly lifting off the ground, because I wanted to drive and not to fly. I could feel in my mind how K.I.T.'s white lights underneath his smooth medium dark red hood continued to run instantly towards each other, but he so far refrained from commenting. The main thing is to be careful and take care of yourself. Any unevenness of the ground at increased speed can lead to a fall or the launching of your rollers. Skates aren't much less dangerous on a slick surface either. I suggest you stick to your favorite sports, baseball and football. At least there you wear protective gear, Logan. I had to agree. You're not seriously worried about me, are you? Unlike you, I'm far less carefree than you. The human body is not designed for extreme sports. But you. I am a car. But I am also your friend, and I would rather not have to find a new driver. The whole thing is done, and out of pure self-interest. Unlike Alexander, however, you know a lot more about sports than he does, who I find hard to imagine at a rugby or baseball game. I grinned again and felt the wind blowing in my face. At the moment, I had K.I.T.T in front of me as a fancy convertible whose folding retractable roof had disappeared under the hood flap. So I could see K.I.T.T's interior and looked from the at the moment not illuminated white taillights, also at the car's Ford symbol, contracting in 4-speed rhythm, which was located on the dashboard and offered me a visual translation of the car's Ford communications by means of a sound wave symbol, so that I did not suddenly flinch when the car began to speak in Ford. At the moment, the white fruit cruise bar lit up, informing me that I was steering the Trans Am via my thoughts. Even the car's neural artificial intelligence was a bit idiosyncratic. But K.I.T.T also learned from me, which made us a good team in the meantime. There was also the blue normal cruise and the red speed cruise, which certainly wouldn't let me roller skate back here, though because K.I.T.T hit a somewhat moderate speed that was excellent for me. You can go a little faster if you want. Only hesitatingly did the Trans Am speed increase, and it accelerated over 60 miles. I laughed, even though the car already knew my willingness to take risk. It was a flat road, or more precisely a highway, but fortunately untraveled at the moment. I was only dimly aware of the surroundings around me and was quite cheerful. Nevertheless, I had to concentrate on my ride. In this case, I was finally glad that K.I.T.T was running on the liquid hydrogen helium mixture at the moment, because despite how environmentally friendly it was even with the gasoline fuel, I much preferred the water. K.I.T.T had special filters in his exhaust system that made him an environmentally friendly vehicle. In addition, the liquid hydrogen helium mixture had no odor and did not fog my vision. The exhaust was bent a bit to the side and not directly visible from my position. Pamela had already made sure beforehand that K.I.T.T had both fuels available again in sufficient quantity. I looked at the grey road in front of me and leaned back a bit to keep my balance better, though I also couldn't lean back too far to avoid tipping over backwards. After all, I didn't have skis under my feet, which probably required leaning forward while riding. I saw how in some distance a red Ford Fox crossed our lane and was grateful that this was still far enough away, because I did not know whether K.I.T.T would then rather protect the fox or me. However, he was programmed above all of my protection, and his microprocessors prevented with their calculations actually such incidents. However, K.I.T.T not only had microprocessors that allowed him to react faster than any human, but also had computer technology and neurotechnology, which was used to refer to the Ford voice and Ford control. Logan, I want to warn you, there's a big rock ahead. I can either avoid it, which could cause you to tumble, or glide over it using the wingsuit. Which would you prefer? The car also owned its wingsuit to the lightweight construction of the atomic compressed titanium, because otherwise it would not have been able to simply glide or jump over objects and obstacles. In addition, it had nanofibers in the interior, which also aimed at lightweight construction, because the lighter K.I.T.T was, the easier he could overtop objects. Wait a minute, Per, and reduce the speed a little. Understood. The dark red Trans Am slowed down a bit and felt myself catching up. This was exactly the action I intended. I felt sand and small stones under my rollers, and was nevertheless somewhat glad when I was able to hold onto the rear spoiler of the car and threw the loops on the hood flap with one hand after tying a knot, while I continued to hold onto K.I.T.T's rear with the other hand. Then I clamped the ropes under the spoiler and held on with both hands. I'm ready for your maneuver, but please think of something gentle. I don't want to be spun through the air. I would not have been very happy about that either. The car gallantly dodged the large stone, and I quite comfortably let myself be pulled along with it at its rear. Then K.I.T.T had gently circled the object, and I smiled, noticing that the driving wind whistled unpleasantly between my teeth, so I closed my mouth again. The next moment I saw a car, also with the top down, drive past us. It was a dark blue Chevrolet Impala, whose driver wore a yellow headscarf and looked at me in complete bewilderment. That was also a true classic car, because K.I.T.T was a modified 1982 Trans Am, but he was still a brand new with state-of-the-art technology. Only the other members of K.I.T.T drove real classic cars. I waved a hand at her, and she made an effort to then return her gaze to the road. It was obvious from K.I.T.'s open top that no one was behind the wheel. The woman was obviously of richer background, as she was wearing a yellow costume, matching brown leather gloves, and apparently felt that K.I.T.T and I was disturbing her while driving. I saw through K.I.T.'s outside mirror how she was obviously also a bit indignant about our behavior, but at the same time she was so dumbfounded that my car seemed to be driving alone that I was glad that no other road users on the road and no wildlife on the road anymore. I think it would be better if you, not only in the interest of the young lady, but also in your own interest, would take a seat inside me. Why? Is the jet approaching, or does Alexander want to spoil our vacation again by conjuring up another job from his repertoire? The Grace Technologies jet was K.I.T.'s mobile maintenance unit and was also our second headquarters, where Pamela and Alexander mostly stayed. Unlike other planes, however, this one was dark red, the same color as K.I.T.T, and had the Grace Technologies logo, a silver queen chess piece on the side. Code's other offices were located throughout the United States and by now all over the world, because help was needed in every country, though we mostly limited our sphere of influence to the United States. Because of the role, the corporation's relatively small core team couldn't be everywhere. I frowned a bit, wondering what K.I.T.T meant, since his intelligent paint had a far greater range than my eyes, but then soon spotted the object in question. K.I.T.T, please pull over, I want to get in. The car obeyed me within a second, and a white digital speedometer counted down to 0. I had packed a change of clothes in my black travel bag and would change first, because I hated not facing problems in my familiar black leather jacket. A few minutes later, I was wearing my black leather jacket, violet shirt, black cowboy boots and black jeans, not to mention my fancy sunglasses and black belt with the silver and gold buckle and embossed G in the middle. It was perhaps a bit strange, but I felt protected in my leather jacket and clearly more comfortable than in my sportswear. The door opened already times alone, and I got in. I gave K.I.T.T a thought impulse to close the top and threw myself into the driver's seat. Then I took a deep breath and briefly checked the fit of my hair. K.I.T.T did alert me to an issue, but I also sensed that it was not a matter of life and death. After stowing my roller skates, ribbon and the rest of my gear back in the bag, I was satisfied, zipped up the bag, tossed it into the footwell and pulled K.I.T.'s gullwing door toward me. Can you tell me what's going on? Up ahead here. Do you see that elevation some distance away? Now I actually discovered something, and I put the gear shift in D to continue driving. In my familiar clothes, I already felt significantly more comfortable and also safer. Logan, you should prepare yourself for the worst, because I think we were looking at somewhat straight contemporary. I frowned. Then I pushed the gas pedal down further and watched the digital speedometer shoot up. K.I.T.T switched back to normal cruise because he knew how much I liked driving myself, even though I enjoyed driving by thought control every now and then, because there, especially on long trips, you could rest your muscles a bit, and I could also drive Kick a mind command or verbal command to get some sleep. He then acted on his own. I had placed my hands on the unusual shaped black steering wheel, inspired by the gullwing steering wheel, on the right side of which was the white embossed head of a queen chess piece, and on the left side of which was the typical phoenix firebird symbol. All in all, the Gray's intelligence, unusual shaped steering wheel was more reminiscent of an airplane control stick than a steering wheel. But I knew that Kick's inner workings were also inspired by that, because he also had quite a few dials, switches, levers and other unusual components. The most common thing was still the grey plush upholstery and PMD scenes inside the car, which also had the silver Gray's Intelligent lettering under its logo. I maintained my speed and suddenly knew why Kick was so concerned. The find was not an animal, nor a bomb, which would not have mattered to Kick's atomic compression, but something completely different, and I could gradually see its extensions as I headed straight for it and finally slowed down. A woman was lying on the road. I could see that through the increasing clearing smoke. The car was silent and in this regard at the moment. There were thick plunks of smoke ahead, and Kick's intelligent paint allowed me to compensate for the lack of visibility through the windshield. Then I finally stopped the Trans Am and saw a large boxy armored grey car that appeared to be a money transporter. Can I get out without danger? Is the woman still alive? I said to Kick. A blue schematic graphic of a person appeared on the monitor in the center of the car, showing a MAT scan with values of him, but it was also clear to me that the woman was dead, as the car finally confirmed to me. And yet there was something strange about it, because I felt a memory of my past run through me, another memory of the past, when suddenly several costumed and masked figures appeared behind the armored car, all looking like actors from William Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, but without period garb. I had seen this one as a child and knew the characters from the play, of course. Two of the characters looked a bit like the donkey and the fairy queen from A Midsummer Night's Dream. However, while these characters reminded me of the characters from the play, it was more of a distorted, insidious version of it, such more of a Midsummer Night's Nightmare, and I felt myself being truly grateful for Kick's presence as I glanced over to the glove compartment where I kept my 9mm semi-automatic pistol that dated back to my days in the FBI, and wrestled with myself to possibly take it with me, which I refrained from doing because I didn't want to hurt anyone. Even I was perfectly entitled to carry a gun as a missing agent for the FBI. Please wait another second to get out of the car until I have finished analyzing the smoke. I waited for a moment. You can't get out now. And then I noticed the past threatening to catch up with me, and I glanced at Kick's code thought symbol, the white sound waves contracting and expanding, and slowly opened the gullwing door. However, the symbol turned white only when Kick said something, otherwise it did not lit up. Back me up, Kick. Should I contact Alexander? No, we'll get through this alone. Man against man, or man against car. In the process, these characters are likely to lose out. After all, not everything is true that could also be false. I owe it to all of us, Kick, especially to you, my friend, especially to you. With those words, I stood next to the car and looked at the figures like a lone cowboy who had snuck out of a western and was waiting for someone to shoot him, because my bulletproof vest was next to me and stand off in front of me. On the side of the road there was only some grass, small bushes and dust, like in a prairie landscape from a western. And I looked at the almost black smoke, which seemed like promise of doom in a bad movie or stage play, as I looked at the obvious leader and was overcome by a faint sense of what was about to follow. Logan, you might want to get back in. I wrestled with myself for a moment and finally followed Kick's suggestion, because the smoke could also turn out to be quite dangerous, and I didn't want to risk poisoning. I would recognize the man's statue anywhere, and it was not one of the Bossettis or anyone else from my recent past, not even a relative. It was a dead man who haunted me like a ghost from one of Shakespeare's stage plays, or a dark premonition of the Oracle of Delphi, or the curse of Cassandra. A gloom I was not able to describe came over me in a shiver of strangeness. I hope I have given you an impression of the book. You can see now that Freedom Rider has many facets that you can discover when you read it. It is complex, but it is also a piece of entertainment literature. Enjoy reading it and buckle up. You can order the book worldwide in German and English. So far, I have read the first chapter in the preface now. I hope you get an impression of the book. And I hope I have aroused the interest of the readers, scientists, researchers, and maybe someone who wants to build the car of the future today. Because K.I.T.T is the car of the future today, and K.I.T.T was the car of the future in 1982. So far, I give you an impression of the book, and I hope you enjoy reading it. Okay, to remind you, this is the book, the front cover and the back cover. You can order it everywhere, in every bookstore, at Amazon, wherever you want. And you can buy it in German and English, and I hope you will enjoy reading the adventures of Logan and K.I.T.T. The contour-throat, mind-talking car. I've invented maybe a piece of the car of the future today now. And of course, a lot of Knight Rider, and maybe a little touch of a few other things. Great entertainment, world literature, and a great touch of Knight Rider. One thought can make a difference. That's the slogan for the Knight Rider series, and I hope you enjoy reading. Goodbye, Catherine Knight, the author of the Freedom Rider book series. I hope you will subscribe my channel, my YouTube channel, and read the series, and maybe leave a positive 5-star review at Amazon. That would be very great and very supportive of you, because I want to write the 4th novel of Freedom Rider. I want to continue with the series. I would also like to say that this book has power. It is a book with many facets of mankind, the great questions of mankind, and updated modern technology, the great questions of the future of technology. And it also has a slight touch of theater inside. All these facets are going to make a very great story with very great plots and subplots, and I hope you will read it too. You will read it now. And this is the first chapter, the preface, and a few words I have to say, and I've introduced the car to you. And I hope you will read my masterpiece, Freedom Rider 3, The Scent of a Beauty. Catherine Knight. Goodbye.